Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Madar Gavelazian. Coming up in today's newscast. IDF has mapped out the home for demolition of one of the terrorists responsible for the murders of Lucy, Maya, and Rina Dee. The deadline for selecting representatives of the Judges Selection Committee is looming. ILTV has all the details. And a recent discovery of 12,000-year-old miniature flutes in northern Israel. But what were they used for? We open tonight with news of a terror attack in Judea and Samaria where 4 people were injured in a shooting attack. Israel Defense Forces are in pursuit of the suspects. And in the meantime, Israel Defense Forces mapped the home overnight Tuesday of one of the Palestinian terrorists who carried out a shooting attack in the Jordan Valley, in which Lucy, Maya, and Rina Dee were murdered. IDF soldiers mapped out the home of Maaz Masri in the Rafidia neighborhood in Nablus overnight Tuesday. Masri was one of 2 Palestinian terrorists who shot Lucy, Maya, and Rina Dee at point-blank range on April 7, 2023, while the family was driving on vacation in the Jordan Valley. During the operation, armed Palestinians threw stones, explosives, and opened fire on the forces, who responded with shooting and self-defense. On May 30th, the IDF mapped out the home of the second terrorist, Hassan Suleiman Katani, who also carried out the attack. During the operation, the IDF, Shin Bet, and Border Police arrested 9 suspects throughout Judea and Samaria and confiscated large stashes of weapons and ammunition. And on Wednesday, the Knesset must appoint 2 of its members to the powerful Judicial Selection Committee. Yet, as of Tuesday, no agreements or announcements have been made as to the appointments. This is a very contentious and crucial issue. Let's take a look at the report. The Knesset is scheduled to vote on Wednesday to appoint 2 parliamentarians to the Judicial Selection Committee, a committee responsible for appointing judges to all of Israel's civilian courts. The 9-member committee is comprised of 3 High Court justices, including the Chief Justice, along with 2 representatives of the Israeli Bar Association, 2 government ministers, including the Justice Minister, and 2 members of Knesset. The Knesset may appoint any 2 MKs to serve on the committee, though the body has usually selected 1 parliamentarian from the coalition and 1 from the opposition. Yet currently there is controversy and no agreements over who the Knesset will appoint. After weeks of infighting, the opposition is aiming to push Yesh Atid MK Karine El-Harar to receive the 2nd spot on the committee, though the coalition has yet to signal they will approve her appointment. Within the coalition, there is also division as to whether it will seek to appoint 2 of its own representatives or whether it will leave 1 spot for an opposition MK. The coalition has also not finalized who its candidates would be. Failure to reach an appointment of an opposition member to the Judicial Selection Committee would likely jeopardize the ongoing negotiations on the judicial reform currently taking place at the president's residence. Israel Beitenu head Avigdor Lieberman, who is not involved in the negotiations, said Monday at his party's weekly meeting that the coalition and opposition are close to finalizing their first agreement on the reforms and would likely announce in the very near future. And joining us now with more on the Judicial Selection Committee is Eliav Breuer, the Knesset reporter for the Jerusalem Post. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
So this is a very sensitive and controversial issue and also a very complicated one. So can you break it down for us? What is going on with the appointments to the committee?
Right. So first of all, the committee is responsible for appointing all of Israel's judges, whether it's Supreme Court judges or regional court judges or magistrate court or even transportation, all of Israel's judges. So this committee has a lot of power. Now, there are 2 members of the Knesset who serve on this committee, and on Wednesday there'll be a vote for these 2 members of the committee. Traditionally, the Knesset, whoever's the coalition in the Knesset would choose one of its own as to occupy 1 spot on the committee and allow the opposition to occupy the other spot on the committee. But this time around, there are a lot of voices calling on Justice Minister Eliav Breuer and Prime Minister Netanyahu to direct all of the coalition members to appoint to have both spots occupied by coalition Knesset members. The reason this is a problem is because the Judicial Appointments Committee is one of the most controversial issues in the whole judicial reforms, where the coalition is trying to gain power and the opposition is trying to block the coalition from gaining power in the committee. The opposition sees the coalition's attempt to occupy both spots as a step that's a lack of faith in negotiations and an attempt to take over the committee.
And so who are the leading candidates at the moment as far as the coalition is concerned?
Right. So first of all, the opposition all came together for one candidate. That's opposition Yesh Atid MK Karin El-Harar. The coalition, so far there are 8 different coalition candidates from 3 different parties. Now the vote's anonymous, so unless only one candidate puts their vote, unless all the other candidates take away their candidacy, there's no real way to ensure that the opposition will get a spot on the committee.
And so, is it still unclear that the coalition will agree to appoint a member of Knesset from the opposition? I mean, what's going on inside the coalition? As you said, there are many forces pushing in different directions. What more can you tell us?
Right. So what's going on inside the coalition, there's basically 2 camps. And this is not new, right? There's the more moderate camp who's saying, look, we've already, this is a tradition. There's no reason to break the tradition. We should give the opposition the spot on the committee. It doesn't matter. There's no reason to blow up the talks now. And the reform and all the protests have, caused us enough trouble already. And then there's the hawkish camp, right, led by Justice Minister Levine and by the parties further to the right in the coalition, who are saying no. There's no reason for us to make any concessions to the opposition. They haven't promised us anything, so let's use this as a bargaining chip and appoint both and occupy both spots by the coalition.
Mm-hmm. And so if the Knesset does decide not to appoint an opposition member, would this indeed mean, the end of negotiations for the legal reforms?
Yes, and the opposition has made that clear without doubt. So that's why this is so important, because if on Wednesday evening, we'll know probably by Wednesday afternoon at about 2:30, if it becomes apparent that 2 coalition Knesset members were chosen to the committee, then that means the talks at the president's residence are over, and we could start seeing a lot more chaos.
A lot more chaos. And now, yet Avigdor Lieberman coming out yesterday and saying that the 2 sides have pretty much already reached an agreement. I mean, is this true? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so it depends what you mean by agreement. Both sides have, according to all the reports and what everybody's been saying, although this hasn't been officially confirmed, is that both sides have agreed in principle on 2 relatively minor issues in regarding the reform. And so there's almost an unspoken agreement where if the coalition allows the opposition a member on the Judicial Selection Committee, the opposition will agree to support these 2 laws, which they don't have a problem with in principle.